Welcome to another OU Insider YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune, and we are here to. I hear reverb, by the way. But anyways, we're here to talk some Oklahoma sports, athletics, college basketball, all the above, man. Recruiting, transfer portal, whatever you want to talk about. We are at your proposal tonight. So it obviously everybody's watching the OU OSU game right now. Oklahoma is up on Oklahoma State, which is good for you, all right. So boomer centers out there. So people are saying the audio is wonky. Is it? Is the audio still wonky? Let us know.
Sounds just fine to me, but then again,
they say they can barely hear me. So that's interesting.
You're just gonna have to yell, Brandon. Just shout.
I'm gonna yell. Can you hear me now? No.
Well, a lot has happened since last we convened to do this thing. It's been 4 weeks since the National Signing Day special that we've had the opportunity to do this broadcast, and we're going to be bringing this to you guys throughout the offseason regularly on this same timetable, Wednesday nights at 8:30 p.m. Obviously, a lot of y'all are watching Bedlam right now, so I would imagine your attention is divided, and I would imagine there are a lot of folks that would regularly be watching live that will instead be catching the replay on the YouTube channel after the fact. But Brandon, a lot has happened. I think last we broadcasted live on this channel, Peyton Bowen was an Oregon Duck. So that tells you just how long it's been and how wild it's been since the last time we did
an
installment of OU Insider Live.
Yeah, I mean, hey, here's the deal is Oklahoma's doing a lot of things, obviously through the portal, the signing of obviously Deshaun McCullough, Reggie Pearson, Trace Ford, Bothroyd, Rouse, which was a flip. I think we need to talk about that.
How about that?
That was something. I caught wind of it like early in the morning. Like that was a possibility. Mm-hmm. I don't remember where I was at, but I wasn't by a computer or anything like that. I was at my kids' stuff. That's right. I had kids' stuff all day long. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and just let this thing ride out, see what happens. And literally 2 minutes after my kids' game tipped off, I get a notification, hey, he's about to post. I was like, what? And then by the time I start to text you all, he put it up on Twitter. So, it was that was something. I know Nebraska was shocked. I know they were fairly upset with how that went down. And people want to say Oklahoma threw more NIL. And I want to make this clear to everybody. They did not. They threw what did the source tell me?
The amount of money that was at play was competitive on OU's end, but it wasn't as if
it was. Yeah, I mean, they threw an amount out there that was acceptable. Is what was
exactly. There you go.
An acceptable amount for Coach Beatonbow because of what he does, and Rouse trusts Coach Beatonbow.
Contrary to the report that you saw on Twitter from Cornhusker Juan, Walter Rouse is not getting paid $1 million to play offensive tackle at Oklahoma next season.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's absurd. And here's the thing is he would have been at USC had USC administration allowed one semester graduations, and they don't. So that's where he opened things up, and he ends up at Oklahoma. So USC's policy actually helped Oklahoma out in this favor.
So you're dubbing this, we are labeling this a head-to-head victory for Oklahoma over USC.
No, I'm not labeling anything like that. I'm just telling you what I know. And who I heard it from is about as good as they come, because USC tried hard there for a bit to get Rouse. but they what they tried to do is they tried to get him to go and wait till spring. They tried to get him to graduate from Stanford, wait till spring, and then enter, because then he would have been able to be accepted by USC enrollment. And he didn't want to do that. So at the end of the day, it helped Oklahoma because he wanted to go through 9 months with the team. He wasn't worried about, like, I think the other thing that worked out in Oklahoma's favor was the fact that their engineering, since he's a biochemistry engineer major, really helped out Oklahoma in this. The fact that they're so respected with oil and gas and all that other stuff, that it was one of those deals where they're like, okay, they made some exceptions, allowed him to come in, obviously from Stanford. That's a good look on Oklahoma. They have a guy, an academic All-American, mind you, transferred from Stanford to OU to get an Oklahoma degree. That is about as good as it gets if you're the engineering department.
Now, Brandon, as we look at this portal haul, and obviously it's not a complete haul for Oklahoma because they still have to bring in Tyler Harrell, Jalen Robinson, Xavier Worthy, and Ajayi Hall to round out the wide receiver room.
Oh, yeah. You got to bring in anybody that, no, yeah, you said Jalen Robinson, right?
Uh-huh.
Bring back Jalen Robinson, mind you.
Wouldn't that be wild?
You know what? I think that's an interesting deal because I was talking to somebody about the portal stuff in regard to wide receiver, and you know who I was talking to, or the two people, and they know. And so it was put to me like this. It was, hey, they want to make a last second move here. But if somebody doesn't enter the portal that they want last second, then they have 3 or 4 guys that there's buzz circulating the coaching ranks that could enter the portal after the spring. And none of these are guaranteed. I don't know the names, I don't ask that type of stuff because that's just trouble to begin with. It's just buzz. I'm sure those type of things will start leaking out publicly as the months go on anyways. Oh, this person's looking and this person's looking, this person's looking. The thing about with coaches is they get people on and tell them that type of stuff all the time. So I do think I wouldn't be shocked if Oklahoma took a look at Jalen Robinson. I know that he's projected to go to Texas. Wouldn't be shocked if Oklahoma went after AD Mitchell a little bit too. Like at least tried, at least check the water temperature to see what was going on there, because apparently he's got something going on in the DFW area potentially that could help Oklahoma because it's so much closer, just with traffic and everything to get to DFW.
I love how you say he's got something going on.
Well, I mean, it's not my business to say what it is. I'm just saying it's a personal thing that you would want to be close to. And potentially, I don't know if it's fact or not 100%. That's why I'm saying potentially going on. And also, Emmett Jones recruited him out of high school. So there's a pre-existing relationship there as well. So I don't know. I don't know is there. Still trying to check on that a little bit. Put out some fillers to people to see what I could get back. I haven't heard anything back quite yet, but hoping by midday tomorrow, hopefully to have something a little bit more solid on that. But whatever it is, AD Mitchell is going to have to go quick. So he's either going to choose Texas because that's where he was going to go regardless, or he's going to take a quick trip because obviously, what is it? When's the last day of enrollment at Oklahoma?
Oh gosh, it would be the Friday of I think it would be the Friday of the first week of classes would be the last day of the add drop period, which would be the 20th. Yeah.
Okay. So
a couple days.
I always thought it was like 2 weeks or something like that.
It may be 2 weeks. It may be 2 weeks. It might be the 27th.
Yeah. I thought it was like 2. I thought it was the end of the month, but yeah.
Go
ahead.
if before we get to the super chat, and we already got a couple questions here in the super chat, Brandon, as I tried to get to this question earlier and we kind of got sidetracked. But as we look at this portal haul for Oklahoma, as we look at the 12 guys that they've already brought in via the transfer portal, obviously Deshaun McCullough is the headliner. There's no question about that. But who's the one guy that folks aren't talking about enough?
Reggie Pearson. There is a lot of buzz that he was one of the top safeties in the league last year. Very underrated player. Texas Tech did not want to lose him. They were very frustrated with that and how all that went down. What he did against Oklahoma was just, 11 tackles, 10 unassisted. So, and he made play after play after play against Oklahoma. He's a guy that can come in and help bring along the Peyton Bowens of the world, help alleviate some of the issues in coverage and in tackling in space that Billy Bowman always seemed to have to make up at some points during the season last year. So when Billy Bowman's not on the field, you still have Reggie Pearson. Obviously, you'll have Peyton Bowen. You'll have RSJ. You'll have a better safety room. But Pearson brings it up a notch. You get some leaders in there in the secondary, and everybody that I talk to says they're real. He is a real deal McCoy. Like, they think he is big time and going to change a lot in the OU secondary and help out Billy Bowman a lot. And then when you bring in Deshaun McCall, like you said, obviously him being the biggest haul of them all, I think, you've transformed that back end, right?
You have. And right now, I'd project that Billy Bowman and Reggie Pearson are your two starting safeties in 2023. But I think beyond that, when you look at that room collectively, there's so much quality depth, and there's so many guys that can be plug and play options for Oklahoma in the back end, whether you're talking about those two guys or Key Lawrence or Robert Spears Jennings or a true freshman in Peyton Bowen. And maybe a guy like Kendall Dolby gets some run at safety because we know he can bounce around. Maybe Makari Vickers ends up playing safety. Maybe Jacoby Johnson ends up there. And so with so many guys that have the ability to line up at that position and give you meaningful snaps, give you good reps in game environments, I think you got to be thrilled with the direction of that room under Brandon Hall. And I think I don't know if there is a position group that's been as thoroughly overhauled in terms of personnel and in terms of overall talent level than the safety room over the last year and a half. Another guy that I will underscore, and he's a guy that we have not really talked about at all, but that I think whose addition has gone quite understated, is that of former Central Michigan punter Luke Elzinga. Because look, you're not going to replace a guy like Michael Turk. Michael Turk was one of the top 3 punters in college football last year. Yeah, and nobody has a stronger leg than that guy. But in Luke Elzinga, you bring in a guy that was an all-conference selection in the MAC. He doesn't cost you a scholarship spot. He's got 3 years of starting experience under his belt, and he's going to help you win that battle of field position. And so when we're talking about winning in all 3 phases of the game, which Oklahoma has struggled to do simultaneously over the last few years, a guy like Luke Elzinga isn't going to move the needle a whole heck of a lot in the public eye. But when you take a look at the tangible impact that he can have on a football game, I think he's a guy that is criminally undervalued for what he brings to the table amidst this class of portal grabs for Oklahoma. From the super chat, Brandon, Captain 405, what up, Cap? He says, latest on junior college defensive lineman Michael Nwakocha, who picked up an offer from Oklahoma last week.
I just got a text. It's pretty funny. I got told to check my sources by somebody, totally joking, but just so everybody knows, Dolby will be here tomorrow. uh, all right, yeah, but how do we pronounce his name?
Michael Makocha is what I'm going with.
Mokocha?
Yeah.
Sounds great to me. And we'll be corrected if it's wrong later on. So yeah, here's the deal. I talked to him for a good while the other day. He has no plans on making a decision anytime soon. Wants to take official visits after the dead period, which is going to start after in a few weeks. He's just doing in homes and all that type of stuff with coaches. But it, I I think Oklahoma is probably the leader right now. I'm not even gonna. I mean, I'm not making that up. Now, I think there's going to be other offers that are going to be thrown out there to him. So I don't know that that's going to be the. How do I want to put it? I don't know that that's going to be the end all. Like, obviously, Oklahoma would love to add him late to the class. He has a chance to be a really good player. You watch his film, 6'4", 285, just really twitchy, makes a lot of plays, but it's obviously he's junior college. He reminds me a lot of Perrin Winfrey a little bit out of Iowa Western. Honestly, the way he's just twitchy in the middle, can line up inside, outside. Just would be a really good addition, and not just depth. I think he would come in and potentially contribute early on. I think he's that talented. Now, obviously, you got TCU that's going to be pushing hard for him. I was told that they're going to play the NIL game with him because they really want him. So that's something to watch. Oklahoma plays the NIL game. You can't watch what's going on in the portal and in the 2023 class and not go, yeah, they're doing pretty good at it. I actually literally talked to a coach from another P5 program the other day, and he said, you got the Miamis of the world. You've got, obviously, Ohio State, Texas. He threw out Oklahoma as one of those programs that he said, we're just doing it on another level at this point. He said Michigan State, Oregon. Like he said, those programs are just different right now as far as NIL and what they're doing to add players. So Oklahoma fans wanted it. They're getting it. Now the pieces have to come together on the field. But as far as Michael Makocha, I like where Oklahoma stands at this point. I think he's building a really strong relationship with Todd Bates. I think he told me Oklahoma will get an official visit, and they 100% will be in his top 5.
Love it. Elsewhere in the super chat, Jacob Ogle says, we're not talking about Rondell Bothroyd enough. See you boys at SDSU in a few years. Parker, you the man. I appreciate you, Jacob, but are you talking about San Diego State, or are you talking about the 2022 FCS champion South Dakota State Jackrabbits?
Jackrabbits. Yeah.
Who's to say, right? Another contributor in the super chat, who's Nico, asks, what are OU's chances with Ryan Wingo? I've talked to Wingo pretty consistently over the last few months. Never been too terribly high on OU's chances with him, but I will say, if you want to talk about a 5-star wide receiver in the 2024 class that Oklahoma could make some noise for, especially in the aftermath of Emmett Jones hiring, I think that conversation has to start with Micah Hudson.
So what was the question? I was reading Zach Williams say, I said that Woody Washington should move to safety. No, I didn't say that. I said I heard from multiple people that is in the conversation right now. I never said I wanted it to happen. Big difference, Zach. Don't put words in my mouth. That's one thing. Anyways, what'd you say?
Yeah, so we were talking about Ryan Wingo, and that kind of opened the door to a conversation about the elite wide receivers in the 2024 class as well. And obviously that's a position of premier interest to a lot of fans right now, given the novelty of the Emmett Jones hiring, how fresh that all is, and what the direction might be for Oklahoma's wide receiver room with Jones now in charge. I've never been terribly high on Ryan Wingo, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, as it pertains to OU's chances to get him. But
No.
the other thing I did say, Brandon, and I'd be curious to hear your take on this, is that I think if you're talking about a 5-star receiver that Oklahoma could make some interesting noise for after Emmett Jones hiring, I'd keep an eye on Micah Hudson out of Lake Belton, Texas.
Yeah, the relationship him and Emmett Jones has is really, really strong. He is at the top of the list for obviously Coach Jones in Oklahoma. They like him a lot. They also are really, really high on Bryant Wesco out of Midlothian. They've already been by there. As a matter of fact,
Emmett Jones was there today, I think.
Today, yeah, exactly. He spent the last few days in the DFW area really locking down some things. Trying to pull up the list that I was given of players that they're really high on real quick. Yeah, I mean, obviously they like Draylon Moore quite a bit. Zion Kearney is another player that they're really high on in 2024. The DeSoto, DeCorian Moore, I think he's 25, right? But
25, yep.
Yeah, but they like him quite a bit. Trying to see if I can remember all of the names here off the top of my head. It was quite the list. They like TJ Moore out of Tampa Catholic. But yeah, that's kind of the guys that you see right now. Keandre Hendry, Josiah Martin from Denton Geyer is another guy that I think Oklahoma might make a run at some point. Parker Livingstone is somebody that I know Coach Jones has been high on at Texas Tech, and it's going to take some convincing, I think, with some of the staffers at Oklahoma to get that offer to take place out of Lovejoy. Elijah Green from Classen, Oklahoma City, Northwest Classen. Yeah, he's a player that I expect to blow up. He's down there with C4, so Sean Cooper is going to push that agenda. He's going to get his name out there, and I think you're going to start seeing some offers, some big offers roll in for Elijah Green. And don't be shocked if Oklahoma did it, because Texas Tech offered him at a camp, and I mean, he showed out at their camp apparently and really stood out, and that caught Coach Jones's eye. I think it's going to take getting Levy and a couple other guys on the wide receiver staff to buy in there. But if he can, don't be shocked to see that offer take place as well. And then Terry Busey, JJ Harrell out of Mississippi, Zion Riggins, Isaiah Robinson, Legion Bay. Those are the names that I've heard most that Oklahoma will at least check the temperature with and see if they can't get some footing as they move forward through the spring and the winter.
Yeah, and Parker Livingston is a guy that we're going to be asked a lot about in the next few months, just because I think he is he's probably the Cole Adams of this class, in that it's not really clear right now whether Oklahoma is going to make a run at him or not. But I think there's a very conspicuous understanding that he's got a great deal of affinity for Oklahoma, and that if OU does offer, that's probably going to be a pretty open and shut courtship, as long as they don't drag their feet too long. Just the question is, can you get, does Oklahoma make that offer? Or
I want to say something real quick, because there's this back and forth, Parker, with about Hudson on our chat saying what he did at the OU Texas game. I doubt he becomes a Sooner. His sister goes to OU. He did that because he's a kid. Oklahoma was down 49-0. He went and set up there with some friends from Temple and started cheering on for Texas because he's a kid. He's a 15, 16-year-old kid. That's what they do. Taking that and saying that, and I'm not saying he's going to be a Sooner, but I'm saying that isn't going to be the reason why he's not a Sooner. I promise you.
Yeah.
There's going to be a relationship built, and what Oklahoma closed out and who they have at quarterback and who they could have potentially coming up committing at quarterback at the end of January, that's going to open some eyes to a lot of receivers.
Jimmy Satterfield in the chat says Parker Livingston is 4 inches taller than Adams. Yeah, Jimmy, I know. I wasn't making that comparison on a physical plane at all. They're two very different players. That the comparison was more as it pertains to the discourse surrounding that player and Oklahoma in the months to come. But I'll say this much. I got to watch a lot of Parker Livingston this past fall. I'd be hard pressed to believe there are more than 20, 25 receivers in the country better than that kid. He's criminally underrated at number 51 among receivers in the 24/7 sports composite. And I expect him to rise because he is the complete package: size, speed, athleticism, ball skills, can contribute as a returner. That's a guy that everybody in the nation should be going after. And when you look at his offer sheet and see the likes of Texas and Georgia and Tennessee and Florida State and Arkansas, and to think that even with all those schools on his offer sheet, Oklahoma would still stand a really good chance of being able to secure his commitment pretty expediently if they were to offer. I think that's a guy that we're going to have to, and that we will keep close tabs on in the days and months to come. Elsewhere, Zach Williams asks, Michael Hawkins and DJ Hicks are close, I heard. Maybe A&M makes a run at Hawkins.
Lawyer 31. they comment very similar.
Yeah. Michael Hawkins is not a fan of Texas A&M as a program. I can tell you that much. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Don't need to go too deep into the weeds on it, but suffice it to say, I do not see A&M being a player at any point for Michael Hawkins. And as we get close to his decision date on January 31st, with Kendall Briles, the former Arkansas offensive coordinator, now set to accept the same position on TCU's staff, it looks for all the world like Michael Hawkins is going to be an Oklahoma Sooner. Who's Nico dropped another $2 in the super chat and asked, does OU land Williams Nwaneri and Nigel Smith? I believe they land Nigel Smith. Mm-hmm. Yes. Williams Nwaneri is an interesting case. And we had somebody else comment earlier that he seems like an NIL kid because of the programs that he's visiting. That could not be further from the truth. That program that he's at Lee's Summit North, is run by head coach Jamar Mosey, former Sooner and father of 2025 four-star wide receiver Isaiah Mosey. And let me tell you this much. Jamar is a stand-up guy, does not deal with any BS, keeps priorities where they should be for his kids, and provides a great deal of oversight throughout the recruiting process and accompanies his players on all of these visits together. So as a general rule, you will see his son, Isaiah, making all the same visits that Williams Nwaneri is going to make. You will likely see a couple other Lee's Summit North players tagging along on those visits, because when they do visits, they do them all together. And Jamar is very intentional about making sure that his kids see all that there is to see and get the opportunity to get on campus at the programs that are most diligent in recruiting those players at LSN. And Oregon is one of those schools that has consistently and effectively recruited both Williams Nwaneri and Isaiah Mosey. And that goes back to Dan Lanning's ties to the area. Right. And so just to pick one example, he's not visiting Oregon because Oregon's throwing a crap ton of money at him. He's visiting Oregon because Oregon was very early to the table with an offer, and they've maintained consistent contact. In speaking with Nwaneri, that's always one of the schools that he has referenced to me as one of the ones that has been the most consistent in staying in touch with him and making him feel the love. It's been Oklahoma, it's been Oregon, it's been Michigan State, it's been Alabama. I would say those are the four. that have consistently maintained their presence, maintained a strong presence for Williams-Nwaneri. So he's also the type of kid that I remember having a conversation with somebody very, very close to Williams-Nwaneri, and he said, look, at the end of the day, that kid might just go to Kansas State or Missouri. He doesn't care. He likes what he likes, and he's not one to succumb to the outside pressure when it comes to his decision. Oklahoma has major inroads there, both because of Coach Mosey and because of the fact that you now have Caden Green on campus with OU, enrolled in the 2023 class and set to become a regular contributor at some point down the line in Bill Bedenbaugh's offensive line picture. But I would fully expect that Oklahoma's going to get one of the 5 officials from Williams-Nwaneri. I'll bet you Oregon gets one as well. Those are the 2 programs I would say can most reliably count on an OV from those 2 schools. But his recruitment isn't going to turn into a bidding war, not unless you start to see some influences from outside his family and outside his high school program start to creep into the picture. And I just don't foresee that happening. So would not worry about that. As it pertains to the number 1 defensive lineman in 24/7 Sports 2024 rankings. Lot going on in the chat here. And I think, Brandon, I want to loop back to a conversation that we were just having a few moments ago, and that is the conversation surrounding Michael Hawkins. Because, look, this is a guy that we have talked about for darn near a year and a half on OU Insider. And a guy that was always going to take a hard look at OU. And honestly, a guy that Oklahoma was probably going to have a very natural leg up for, and a hefty one at that, if they came into the fray with an offer, which they did last July. Now, as we sit here on January 18th, Hawkins has announced that he's going to be committing on January 31st. Well, this is a battle between OU and Arkansas. That's the way it's looked for close to 6 months now. And here we are, less than 2 weeks out from the decision. Kendall Briles is no longer in the picture at Arkansas. TCU has their 2024 quarterback already committed in Marcus Davila. It really feels like Oklahoma, if they weren't already in very strong position to land a commitment from the 4-star Frisco Emerson quarterback, the events of the last few days have really solidified that.
Mm-hmm. No, I was told Saturday by somebody really close to Briles that was taking place, and that they thought that if that took place, the visit with Hawkins wasn't going to take place. And sure enough, literally hours after that started to leak that Briles was 100% going to TCU, the Arkansas visit was done. And so even before that, though, you had the Hawkins brothers. He's got a younger brother that's a defensive back that's transferring with, obviously, Michael to Frisco Emerson. They both were on campus this past weekend and really enjoyed their time, loved it, hung out with Coach Lebby quite a bit. And from my understanding, the vibe was that was going to take place, and that Oklahoma really positions it. And they were already in a really good spot. Like I had heard for the last few weeks that there was this buzz that Arkansas was making this run. But here's the deal is we've been saying that the junior day on the 28th, we expected Michael Hawkins back there. And don't be shocked if he comes back and recruits, to be honest with you, as kind of the lead guy of that class. So it's and that's before he even goes announces. So I think that's something we're watching. Obviously things can happen. It's recruiting. We've watched the Peyton Bowen saga. We've watched all this other stuff happen over the last 2 years where just flip the coin, that David Hicks, all that, it could be flipped last second. But this feels different. This feels very intentional. This feels very thought through. And this feels very almost destined, if you will. So we'll see. But I like Oklahoma's chances when Michael Hawkins announces on the 31st. And if he does show up for that junior day on the 28th, don't be shocked if he doesn't have some other big names in there with him, because he is a magnet in that North DFW area. Once he goes public, and if he goes public to Oklahoma, there is a really good chance that Oklahoma is very, very hard to beat on almost all the top talent north of the 121 highway.
Yeah, you want to talk about a Piper effect. There will be one if Oklahoma gets Michael Hawkins. And we have talked extensively in weeks and months past about the run that Oklahoma is poised to make on the east-northeast side of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And the guys that fall within that geographical boundary of note, if you're a Sooner fan, are the likes of Xavier Filsaime, Ryan Jackson, Eli Bowen, Nigel Smith, Peyton Pierce, Parker Livingston, Aaron Flowers. That list goes on. But right there, I think I just named 7 guys that all come from within about a half an hour radius of one another if you're on the road. And Oklahoma will be very difficult to beat for a lot of those guys, with or without a commitment from Michael Hawkins. But if you do get a commitment from Hawkins with the relationships that he has with some of those guys in the surrounding suburbs of Dallas on that east-northeast side, yeah, the snowball could get rolling for Oklahoma a lot earlier than it did in the 2023 cycle. And as you recall, Brandon, the 2023 cycle was pretty kind to Oklahoma one way or another, despite the fact that it really didn't start kicking until July.
Yeah, no, and obviously you got the Peyton Pierce, Zach Williams saying Peyton Pierce is Notre Dame bound. He's visiting Oklahoma for their junior day on the 28th. So we'll see. He actually told me that 100%. So I got some notes coming on OU Insider tomorrow. It's got a lot of stuff. Got some team notes coming on the testing. There's some fast cats on that team, man. I'm not going to talk about them here because it's going to be for our VIP members. But yeah, the testing was pretty. Just some people lived up to the hype, put it to you like that. So
yeah, the word on the street is Gentry Williams can flat fly.
Yeah, not just him.
Mm-hmm.
Not just him.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, one person told me it's not just the speed, it's the length of this team and the athleticism that's different than last year's. So
$2 super chat contribution from Gabriel Brandon, who asks, will Jeff Lebby be around next year? Put me on the record as one that believes that will be the case.
Yeah. I mean, Alabama's the one place, and I've said that for a couple of weeks now, that now I still think that he's going to stay, but I think Alabama's that one place that outside of a head coaching spot, he's turned down 2 head coaching jobs quietly already this year. So outside of that, I don't know. I think there's some, if I remember correctly, I think him and Brent Venables have the same agent. So I don't know that there's going to be a lot of things that are said and done that BV won't know about. But I think at the end of the day, I was told that Lebby doesn't want to leave OU like it is right now after a 6 and 7 season. And if that is truly the case, also, I don't see Dylan Gabriel coming back, or not transferring elsewhere if, he was Lebby was returning. That's another thing that I think. But I could be totally wrong. I don't know. I still think sure.
Another $5 from Captain 405. Next 2024 commits. Well, and I guess that question is next two, because I think we both will put Michael Hawkins among those three, Brand. So beyond Hawkins, two guys that you think will pop early.
Jaden Hardy.
Mm.
And trying to think of 24 offers Oklahoma has in state outside of Xavier Sims. Is there any outside of Danny Okoye?
No, I think that would be it.
I'll say I don't think it'll be Xavier Sims. I think he'll drag it out for a bit. I'll say, man, that's hard, bro. How about Casey Poe? I know that Alabama's making a run.
I
couldn't think of it, but
yeah,
like it's early, like that's hard, right? Like
it is. I think my short list would be Michael Hawkins, Aaron Flowers, and gut feeling, Bryant Wesco.
oh, that's a good one. Yeah, both
because the OU connections.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, Bryant Wesco's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Back to the super chat. $10 from Chris Holmes. Who will Oklahoma's 2024 commits be at defensive tackle, Brandon?
Who will the 4 commits be a defensive tackle?
No. The 2024 commits. Who will they be a defensive tackle?
I'll say Xavier Sims, David Stone. Is Nigel Smith counted as a defensive tackle? I think he's going to be a defensive tackle. But
I wouldn't. I think semantically, I would not count him right now, but I agree with you. He ends up being a defensive tackle
right now. Like, he's kind of like that Derek LeBlanc. You know, people call him a defensive end, but I'm gonna call Nigel Smith a defensive tackle.
Yeah,
because that's what he is. He's a defensive tackle. So I'll say Nigel Smith. I guess, would you call Winner? Well, Winner he's only like 250, isn't he?
Well, yeah, and both he and Nigel Smith, I think, are very similar physically in that they're tall. They're right about 250 pounds right now, but you can just see in the way that they, like, if you interact with them in person, you get a chance to see their frames. You can see it. Those guys are going to be able to pack on 40, 50 pounds and carry it pretty dang well. Winery is faster. He's got more of a capacity to be a true edge than Smith does. But I think both of those guys are going to end up being a lot heavier than they are right now.
Okay. How about this? I'm going to throw out a flyer here. How about this? This will be my third one. So I'm going to go David Stone, Xavier Sims, and I'm going to say Xavier Porter. I don't have any idea, but my point is he's at Tampa Catholic. And obviously we all know that they just landed a Tampa Catholic guy. And because of that, and BV has and obviously a lot of the staff have a lot of connections. Todd Bates in that central Florida area, whether it's Orlando, Tampa, that little region. Todd Bates has a ton of connections there. And so, along with Brent Venables. So I'm going to go out and say that there's a chance that that's, a guy that they pick up. I could be way off, whatever. It's January. They're going to offer like 5 or 6 more guys before it's all said and done. So I'm not even worried about that.
Update on the David Stone recruitment. Jacob Ogle wants to know.
I mean, Ohio State, I think Oklahoma and Ohio State are up there at the top. Georgia Tech lost their guy that was recruiting him the hardest. But I mean, obviously Brandon Jordan is still recruiting him. He's kind of the pass rush guru, but the actual defensive tackle coach is now Georgia Tech. He's been talking up Ohio State lately, but you also have to understand that David's not stupid. He's going to build his brand. He's going to get his. He says that he's not going to let NIL decide his decision, and I believe that. But I don't think he's going to turn away NIL money once it starts flowing his way. So, with that being said, I still like Oklahoma here. His sister goes to OU. He visits Oklahoma. He comes back in the summer. He spends a lot of time in Norman visiting the campus. He's that for. He did that all last summer. Spent a ton of time with Coach Bates. Their relationship might be the best. But I know he actually says it is the best. So I like Oklahoma there. I'll still like Oklahoma until something definitively makes me think otherwise.
Let's see what else the folks are saying. A lot of folks asking about the timeline on Eli Bowen's commitment. Last conversation I had with regard to Eli Bowen's timeline, and this goes back probably a month and a half or so. It was before Peyton's commitment / decommitment / recommitment, whole fiasco. But this goes back probably a month and a half, and the timeline that source gave me regarding Eli Bowen and his commitment date was spring of this year. So couldn't tell you exactly when, but you think with spring months, March through May. So don't hold your breath until then, but I think come March, we'll probably have a better chance of when a lot of these guys are going to lock it in, and Eli Bowen's certainly on that list.
Yeah, I think a lot of these guys, once they take their official, April, May, June, I think that's where you're going to start seeing some decisions made. And it also maybe just at some point you just may see Eli go, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and commit and get it over with because he wants to play with his brother. He's said that before. I'll never forget, standing on the sideline, and I asked him, I said, are you going to go to Notre Dame? This is when, obviously, this was in October. Peyton was still, but you started committed to Notre Dame, but you kept hearing the buzz about Oklahoma. And then you started hearing a little Oregon buzz later on, but he said, no, I'm not going up and playing in the cold. I don't want to play in the cold. So I think weather will play. I think what's going to be easiest on mom and dad is going to play into that as well, going to see their kids play. I still think he ends up at Oklahoma. It's going to be really hard not to end up at Oklahoma at this point.
I mean, I agree. I have a crystal ball in for Eli Bowen, and I'm kind of stunned right now because we have that one person in the chat, right? And I shouldn't be surprised that this is the case, but we have that one person in the chat going, do we want another 5'9" defensive back? Talking, of course, about Eli Bowen. Yeah.
That's what people love about him, his tenacity, his ball skills, the things he changes a defense because he's so good in coverage. He's about 5'10". He's grown a little bit, 5'10", maybe 5'10 and a half. And I think he's still kind of growing. He may get to 5'11". And if he gets to 5'11", that changes a lot of things for him with his speed and athleticism and the way that he covers, just his knack for the ball. He's a dude.
Okay, back to the chat here. Let's see what else we can dredge up as far as conversation topics. Taylor Wrigley asked, does Hawkins' commitment bring in his former 5-star 2025 teammate? That would be Devon Mitchell. And those two are very close, Michael Hawkins and Devon Mitchell. And yes, it will help. That said, understand that Devon Mitchell is a guy that's going to have his pick of the litter. He just got offered today by the school that at this point is probably the one with the most legitimate claim to tight end U, the Georgia Bulldogs, who are on the verge of landing their third top 150 overall tight end in the 2023 class alone as they try to close on Deuce Robinson here down the stretch. So that's not a battle for Devon Mitchell that you're going to win easily. It'll certainly be nice to have an asset working in your favor as far as the friendship with Michael Hawkins goes, assuming Hawkins commits to Oklahoma at the end of the month. Yeah. Chris Loman asks, can we just give a quick shout out to some top OK Preps guy in 2024 to look for? We've talked quite a bit about David Stone and Zadavian Sims and Danny Okoye, who it doesn't look like is going to end up a Sooner at the end of the day. Beyond that, Brandon, names in the 2024 class to watch in the state of Oklahoma. I think the one that's really shot onto everybody's radars over the last couple of weeks in particular would be, well, in the last couple of months to a greater extent, would be Xavier Robinson out of Carl Albert.
Yeah. No, he's big time. I think Oklahoma may eventually end up offering him. But Elijah Green from Classen is another name to watch. It's just that 2024 class. It's not like, oh my gosh, man, the Groves brothers are just not doing well tonight. But it's just not deep. 2024 is just not that deep. Like it's not like 23 was, and definitely not like 25 has the potential of being, with 3 or 4, Division I quarterbacks to top it off with just an assortment of running backs. I guess David Stone has to be counted as OK Prep still a little bit, just because he spent so much time in Oklahoma. I know he doesn't play there. One of these days I'll say why he never moved back, but it's just, that's for another day after 2024 signing days are over. But I don't know, man. I don't know this class to be what we've seen the last two in Oklahoma, because the last two classes have just been absurdly deep in Oklahoma.
All right. Last question from the super chat before we tie a bow on this thing, Brandon. Chris Holmes asks, will 2024 outrank the 2023 recruiting class?
You go first.
I'm going to say yes. It will. Now, it won't be by much. And I don't necessarily expect Oklahoma to sign the number one class in the country by any means. It's going to take a lot to make something like that happen. But I do think when you look at especially the top end of what Oklahoma has the potential to sign, when you look at some of the 5-stars that they could end up with, whether it's guys that look more feasible right now, like David Stone or Williams Nwaneri, or whether it's a guy that is kind of on the fringes right now, on the periphery, somebody that Oklahoma is going to need to make some strides in order to make a run at, like a Micah Hudson, for instance. But I also think where Oklahoma is going to make their hay and why this class is ultimately going to outrank 2023, even if only by a little bit, is because I think you're going to win more of those battles for those high to mid-tier 4-star guys. Mm-hmm. I think 2024 is going to be the year where you end up getting a guy like Jordan Renaud as opposed to seeing him go to Alabama. And I think the meat of this OU class is going to be right there in the high to mid 4-star territory, that 100 to 250 range when you're talking about the national composite rankings. And I think a lot of that is going to be due to the fact that Oklahoma is going to have the juice and the leadership within this class and the camaraderie to be able to close on some of these guys early in the process to such an extent that you're not sweating out some of these battles. And there will always be guys that take their decisions up until signing day. So it's not as if Oklahoma is going to have their entire class committed by September or October, right? We're always going to be waiting on a few. Yeah. But I don't figure that Oklahoma is going to roll into the month of July with 5 commits the way that they did a year ago. And when I look at some of those names that I mentioned that have the potential to commit earlier in the process in favor of the Sooners, like Peyton Pierce, like Aaron Flowers, like Bryant Wesco, perhaps one of the more highly regarded guys, like Nwaneri. Mm-hmm. I think the earlier you can garner that momentum and the earlier you can get guys bought in, the more of a trickle-down effect and an osmosis effect that's going to have on the rest of the class. That's why I think it's so crucial and so big, so significant that it appears Oklahoma's in line to get their quarterback committed on January 31st.
Yeah.
Nothing helps a class really fly high quite like getting your quarterback and the leader of your class pledged early.
Yeah, so I think if it's not better, it's going to be eerily similar to this year's class as far as like ratings and rankings, and maybe a little better commit average ranking or something to that extent. But yeah, I'm with you, Parker. I think there's just a lot of defensive top talent that is looking at Oklahoma a lot harder than they were in 23, just because this staff has had 2 years to build a relationship instead of just one. And that's going to bode well for them, I think, overall. Real quickly, the question was, is 2025 OK Prep's going to be better than 2024? Leaps and bounds better. Leaps and bounds better. Not even in the same ballpark better. I mean, first off, you got Jaden Nickens, who's a 5-star from Millwood, to headline the class. And then you have Nate Roberts, who's already got an OU offer, Alex Schildknight, OU offer, Ryan Grayson. I love this. I love Grady Adamson, David McComb, Fricklin, Shaker Riser. All those guys are Division I quarterbacks.
You got Caden Knight and you got Ravion Larry too, a running back.
Yeah. CJ Nixon from freaking Weatherford. That's just a freak 6'6" athlete, just a dude, man.
And when you factor in some of the guys that will, I truly think the class of 2025 in the state of Oklahoma could end up being 15, 20 deep with Power 5 guys.
Totally agree. It's really, really, really good. So, and that we didn't even talk about Elijah Thomas from Chakotah, just off the top of my head. Like, he's going to blow up. Don't be shocked if Oklahoma doesn't offer him before the spring game. I promise you. Like, that is potential to happen. CJ Simon, trying to think of a couple of other big names. I'm drawing blanks now, man. But anyways, those are names that are going to be big. They're going to have a bunch of offers from all over the country. Like, it's that 2025 class is eerily similar to 22 and 23, just deep across the board. So anyways, I think that'll do it, Parker.
That for this will do it.
OU Insider, Under the Visor, YouTube Live. If you're not subscribed to this channel, you need to subscribe. It's how we get our content. We're going to start putting out breakdowns of offers and all kinds of stuff as the off season rolls around. Maybe do some team stuff. We'll still be doing the lives. We'll be doing the podcasts. All that type of stuff is going to take place right here on this YouTube channel. And if you're not on OU Insider, I got team notes coming up. Parker's got recruiting notes. I've got recruiting notes coming up here over the next few days. I'm going to start breaking down the offers. And what's going to happen is the offers that Oklahoma has put out and will continue to pull out, I'm going to break them down by position each day. And then when I'm done with all the positions, it's going to culminate into a big prediction of what the class is going to be hopefully by middle of February or so, we'll start having the first class prediction this year, and we'll see how it measured up. Last year, I want to say I was like 70 something percent. It was just pure luck, I'm sure. But people went by and we posted it up on OU Insider VIP, and it was pretty spot on, Parker. And what was it, like 0.00 something from the actual score too on National Signing Day? You remember that? How
Oh
far?
yeah. Yeah. And I think
I think I predict them 280, 285, something, something. And that's what Oklahoma ended up with. So, anyways, and that was in March, like March 1st or something like that. So we'll see. Hopefully we're 2 for 2 on that for you all, because I have some high prospects I have going to Oklahoma in this class. And I'm sure Parker will do his as well as the spring rolls on. So if you want to get a part of that, it's $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. Spring ball, winter workouts, college basketball, all the recruiting stuff, the junior days. There's 3 junior days lined up before spring, or even the middle of spring ball. So there's all that. There's going to be visits happening. That's all going to take place, and we're going to finish out the transfer portal coverage and all that type of stuff for OU Insider. Again, $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards, or you can pay $75, get a whole year, get every 24/7 site that there is. It's a great deal, because if you stay with us for 1 year, if you stay with us all the way till 2024 of January of whatever day you sign up, you get Paramount Plus, which means you get Mayor of Kingstown, you get 1923, 1883, Tulsa Kings, 2000 movies, all the big Viacom, CBS shows. You can stream all that is all over Paramount Plus, and you get it if you're with for a whole year before that happens. So we will hopefully see you guys on there. All right, that's going to do it for Parker, Brandon. You guys have a blessed day.